My name is Rachel. I have been married to my husband Daniel for 5 years. And for 3 of those 5 years his mother called me a burden, not once, not twice, consistently, quietly, in the way that certain people repeat something often enough that everyone around them starts to believe it too. Daniel's mother, Carol, is 64 years old. She is the kind of woman who gives with one hand and takes with the other. She helped us move into our first apartment. She brought food when I was sick. She remembered birthdays and sent thoughtful cards. And then in the same breath, the same week, sometimes the same day, she would say something that reminded me exactly where I stood in her eyes. The first time she used the word burden, we had been married 14 months. Daniel had just taken a new job, the hours were longer, the commute was harder. I had been struggling with my health that season, nothing serious, but enough to slow me down, enough to mean I needed more rest than usual. Enough to mean that some weeks the house wasn't as clean as it normally would be. Carol came to visit on a Thursday afternoon. She walked through the apartment, she said nothing for a while, then she looked at Daniel and said very casually, as if commenting on the weather, "You have a lot on your plate, don't you?" Daniel said yes, work had been busy. Carol nodded slowly. "And everything at home too," she glanced at me. "It's a lot for one person to manage." I smiled and said nothing. Daniel said I had been unwell and was getting better. Carol patted his arm. "A good man. Men wouldn't handle a burden like this so graciously." The word sat in the room like something spilled. Nobody acknowledged it directly. Daniel changed the subject. Carol accepted more tea, and I sat there with that word in my chest for the rest of the afternoon. Over the following months, the word appeared in different forms. She told Daniel's aunt that he had taken on a lot with me. She told a family friend that Daniel deserved someone with more energy. She mentioned to his sister that she worried Daniel was carrying too much. None of it was ever said directly to my face. It was always said to someone else, always just loud enough to travel back to me through the family. That is the particular skill of someone who understands how to cause damage without fingerprints. They never aim at you directly. They aim at the people around you and let the words find their own way. Daniel heard some of it, not all. He confronted his mother twice in the first year. Both times she denied the implication. Both times she said she was simply expressing concern. Both times she cried just long enough for Daniel to feel guilty for bringing it up. After the second time he stopped confronting her. He apologized to me instead. He said, "I know what she's doing. I know it's wrong. Don't know how to make her stop." I told him it was fine. It wasn't fine. But I said it was because I could see what it cost him to be in the middle. And I loved him enough to absorb some of that cost. That was my mistake. Not because love is wrong, but because absorbing someone else's cruelty quietly teaches them that the cruelty has no consequences. The moment everything changed came at a family dinner in March. Daniel's parents, his sister, his aunt and 2 cousins, 12 people around a table. The food was good. The conversation was easy. And then Carol said something that she had apparently decided did not need to be whispered anymore. She was talking to Daniel's aunt about how hard Daniel worked. She said he had always been responsible. She said he had never complained. She said he was carrying a lot without ever asking for recognition. Then she looked down the table toward me, and she said, loudly enough for the entire table to hear, "Some people don't realize how much weight they put on the people who love them." Table went quiet, not completely, but quiet enough. Daniel's sister looked at me. His aunt looked at her plate. His cousin pretended to pour more water. Carol smiled serenely and reached for the bread. I looked at Daniel. He was very still. His jaw was set in the way it gets when he is deciding something. I had seen that expression before, but never at a dinner table, never with 12 people watching. He set down his fork, he looked at his mother. And he spoke in the quietest voice I had ever heard him use. He said, "Mom," she looked at him. "Need to say something." She tilted her head slightly. "Rachel is not a burden." Table was completely silent now. She has never been a burden. For one day of our marriage, Carol opened her mouth. Daniel raised one hand gently, not aggressively, just firmly. "Not finished." She closed her mouth. "For 3 years I have watched you say things about my wife that you knew would reach her. I confronted you twice and both times you made me feel like I was the problem for bringing it up. Stopped confronting you because I thought staying quiet was keeping the peace. I was wrong. Staying quiet wasn't keeping the peace. It was teaching you that there were no consequences." He looked at her steadily. "Rachel is the person I chose. She is the person I will always choose. I need you to understand that clearly. Because the next time you imply otherwise at a dinner table or anywhere else, we will leave. We won't come back until you're ready to treat her the way she deserves." He picked up his fork. He continued eating. The table remained silent for almost a full minute. Then Daniel's aunt quietly asked his cousin to pass the potatoes, and the dinner continued. Carol did not speak for the rest of the evening. When she said goodbye at the door, she hugged Daniel. She looked at me briefly. She said goodnight. Nothing more. In the car, Daniel reached for my hand before he started the engine. He held it without speaking. I looked at him. "You didn't have to do that." He looked back at me. "Yes, I did. I should have done it 2 years ago. I didn't argue because he was right and we both knew it. Carol called 3 days later. She asked if she could come over. I said yes. She arrived with flowers. She sat at our kitchen table. She looked at her hands for a long time. Then she said, "I owe you an apology." I waited. "I have been unfair to you since the beginning." I told myself I was protecting Daniel. The truth is I was afraid. I was afraid of becoming less important to him. I chose the wrong way to handle that fear. She looked up. "I'm sorry, Rachel, because Daniel asked me to be, because I have spent 3 days thinking about what he said. I know he was right." I looked at her for a long moment. "Accept your apology," she nodded. "That's more than I deserve." "Maybe." I said it gently, "But it's what I'm offering. Things are different now, not perfect. Some patterns take time to fully change, but Carol calls me directly now instead of always going through Daniel. She asks how I am and waits for the actual answer. Last month she came over and we cooked dinner together, just the two of us. She asked me about my work. She listened. She laughed at something I said, a real laugh, not a polite one. Somewhere in those 3 hours I stopped feeling like a guest in my own marriage. Daniel and I talked about it one evening after she left. He said, "I should have spoken sooner." I said, "Yes, you did eventually. That matters." He was quiet for a moment. "You okay?" I thought about it. "I'm better than okay. I'm exactly where I should be." He smiled. "Yeah, me too." Subscribe to Calm Revenge Stories for a brand new story every single day. Because sometimes the most important thing a person can do for you is simply refuse to stay silent one more time.